Point Studios released a new game which became instant catnip to me because somehow I clocked 30 hours in just 4 days, which I know is not healthy, but on the upside I can give you some tips that will hopefully help you out in your own gameplay. In no particular order, let's start off with expeditions. You go on expeditions to get new exhibits to display in your museum. Simultaneously, you are expected to get both the item itself to pristine quality and maximize the knowledge score. Now, unlike the 2 previous installments, 2 Point Museum forces you to switch museums while you work your way up to a 5-star rating. Since you're hopping around, it is best to go on repeat missions on your well-established museums to boost your knowledge score for each exhibit. Your knowledge score is shared across all your museums, so even if you find an average exhibit, your visitors still get a very good knowledge score. While I do like the expeditions mechanic, the knowledge grinding can get tedious. But that's why I recommend doing it in museums that already turn a massive profit. So the cost of expeditions doesn't matter as much. Even better if you can buy a second helipad. Also, as a bonus tip, don't neglect your bus bonus, which you can find in the second tab of your exhibit. I noticed in my earlier museums I didn't really bother going to this tab and have skipped out on the bus bonus. That's just leaving money on the table really. Number 4. Turning a profit. Especially in the early stages of the game, it seems nearly impossible to turn a decent profit. The only thing that held my head above water was the museum grant. Mechanics that can help you out is taking a sponsorship. You are asked to place a sponsorship, which gives you a monthly check and even gives you a bonus anytime a visitor even glances at it. Make sure to put it in a crowded space and put it a bit early in the museum, so any negative effects won't negate your guest's review at the end of their visit. This dumb billboard has saved several of my museums that barely made a profit and given me much needed room to improve the museum, go on expeditions and get better exhibitions that give bigger donations. Seriously, I don't know if this is a bug, but I've seen guests leaving 10k donations when achieving a dream visit. The only downside to a sponsorship is that guests can get a negative buff from it. But honestly, most guests don't even get that, and the debuff only lasts a few days. Just don't plaster sponsorships all over your museum and you should be good. Though that does sound like a fun make your guests miserable sandbox scenario. It's also easy to forget to establish some tours. I should know, I forget them constantly. The pathing mechanic can get a bit janky though, and I hope this will see some improvement in the future. But guests leave a tip at the end which can help you out. Oh, and make sure to check all your prices. Chances are you can up them because most prices start at a good value. I tend to go for fair value for maximum profit. I only recommend taking out a loan if you really want to create a big new space and need a big chunk of upfront money to establish it. Otherwise, you won't need it. Number 3. Litter. If I had to believe my pop-up notifications, my museums are the filthiest garbage dumps in the whole wide world. Litter does have a temporary negative effect on guests, so it is pretty important to be on top of it. But the pop-ups make it seem much worse than it is. That's where the one janitor to rule them all comes in. The pop-ups started to disappear for me once I had one janitor solely on litter duty. And make sure to train them in the aerodynamics skill. That way they will zoom around your museum to clean up all litter. You don't have to spam trash cans all over your museums either. Just put one slightly next to your vending machine and the majority of guests will instantly drop it in there. Only some guests will still litter, and that's where your super speedy litter janitor comes in. Just make sure you don't hire any staff with the negative traits like toilet terror or fly tipper. Having a cafeteria in your game also helps. Not all guests will go for it because of the expense, but the cafeteria does not cause any litter and is even a decent source of income. It does help that it is no longer an actual death sentence like in 2 Point Hospital. So thanks for improving that AI team. Oh, that said, it was not obvious to me at all that the items on the menu is a drop-down list. Shout out to Geekism's playthrough for showing me that, because I would never have thought to click on that. I thought it was something I had to unlock through expeditions. A simple arrow in the design will make this visually clear. Please and thank you. Number 2. zoning and assignments. We once again turn to the tabs. While I do think both the staff and guest AIs are much better than its predecessors, you sometimes want to guide your staff. If you want a bit more control, you can create zones so they don't roam all over the museum and stay in that designated area. I use this specifically for my janitors and guards. I tend to have one for each zone at least and have the rest of them roam free. For experts and assistants, I prefer to go to the job assignment tab and specify what tasks they can do. Experts that are dull never get to do tours, for instance. And in the Tours tab, I make sure that only experts who are qualified in that field can do the tours. Personally, I would really like a system where I can rank the order in which I want the staff to do which assignment. That way you can really play to the staff's individual strengths and qualifications. But I don't know anything about coding and that does sound complicated. We'll see if that's doable. Number 1. Thieves and Vandals. I've seen people complain about the guard mechanic, specifically the camera room that is expensive. And I agree that cameras are expensive. But I'd argue they only really become relevant once your museum is around star level 3 or 4. And this one item is why. The security archway. Since this is barely mentioned anywhere online or even by the game itself, I feel like I've been cheesing or even cheating the whole Thieves mechanic. I always make sure to have this dumb security door at the start of my museum, so guests have to walk through it. This will instantly reveal vandals and most thieves walking through it. Now I hear the starting sounds of your objections, but what about the thieves guilds that attack your museum? Oh, you mean those losers who come through the toilets? Whoop! My toilets get an additional wall where people have to walk through a security archway, instantly revealing the Boogeyman too. The archways don't even leave any negative effects on the other guests, it just catches thieves. Perfect. Only when your museum is under a direct assault of the golden molars does the archway become ineffective, and can cameras come in handy. This is because those mold people can spawn anywhere in your museum, bypassing the doorway. But even then, I find the guard chair to be more helpful, because a guard can instantly pursue the thief. Only in obscure nooks and crannies is where a camera becomes important. So far, I've played up till 3 and 4 star museums, and I've never encountered golden molars or boogeyman or even jumbo marketing outside of these pop-up events. As long as you don't get those events, the security door method is by far the most effective, and you don't have to bother with expensive cameras yet. And by the time you are a 3 or 4 star museum and those events do start to pop up, you tend to have made enough money to invest in a camera room anyway. Through the door cheese, the vast majority of your thieves and vandals will be able to escape. But they also barely get to set foot in your museum and flee before even stealing anything. And since guards escort caught thieves all the way out of the map, I find it much more effective to just have the thieves flee after paying an entrance fee. And it frees up my guards for the few thieves that do infiltrate into my museums. Anyway, those are some of the things I discovered while playing and found to massively improve my gameplay. If you have any, feel free to share your own findings and tips in the comments to help out your fellow museum curators. Or just comment "Sam is the best" as if this is a weird cult. Okay, goodbye.